Hi, everybody. My name is Sharice Bennett. I am doing the role B for the condition presentation on neurocognitive dysfunction and disorder due to traumatic brain injury or due to TBI. The article that I chose is Unintentional Injuries After TBI, Potential Risk Factors, Impacts, and Prevention. The article started by giving the top three unintentional fatal injuries, which were falls, motor vehicle accidents, and being struck by objects or persons with objects, like a person striking you with an object. Um, and this was between 2006 and 2010. The top three incidents for unintentional fatal injuries were also the top three events that lead to TBI, falls, motor vehicle accidents, and being struck by objects or a person with an object. And the article outlined that or stated that each year 2.2 million TBI injuries result in ER visits. Typically, the injuries from a TBI or the injuries causing TBI are categorized by intention, which is often difficult to assess or ascertain, unintentional and intentional. So, unintentional TBI injuries usually happen very suddenly. The events leading up to that TBI are very sudden and they're unplanned. They can include environmental factors, being struck by lightning, um, drowning in floodwaters, being struck by debris during a hurricane or a tornado. Intentional, the largest category of intentional TBI injuries were failed suicide attempts. And the article stated that injury prevention for TBI and subsequent TBI requires a massive collaboration on the parts of many different people surrounding the individual to include the individual. TBI often result in reduced cognitive functioning, poor decision-making skills, um, disinhibition, diminished safety skills, or inability to remain safe in subsequent injury. And there is evidence that suggests that if the person that has sustained the initial TBI, if they are typically a person that takes a lot of risks, whatever mechanism that is that causes that still exists after TBI, which will cause them to take a lot of risks after TBI, which can lead to subsequent injury. The risk factors for subsequent injury of TBI after TBI include seizures, lack of balance and or coordination, fatigue, altered cognition, and alcohol and drug use. For seizures, there is a large range of people with TBI who experience seizure. Their range is 5% to 39%. Um, People who have sustained a penetrating injury causing TBI have a higher chance of experiencing sustained seizures after the TBI. And because seizures are such a sudden event, they can cause like catastrophic results when they occur. Sudden collapse, falling to the floor, the potential to hit your head on something. If you're, say, climbing up a ladder or walking upstairs, to have a seizure at that moment means you will fall from a great height and then hit a lot of things on the way down, potentially. Um, TBI, the initial TBI or subsequent TBI, or they can also cause orthopedic injuries, which can contribute to the next risk factor, which is lack of balance and coordination. Um, and those can lead to mobility impairments after TBI. Fatigue is another risk factor. Um, an injured brain takes more energy to work to try to function normally. So it can be mental fatigue. It could also be physical fatigue, um, thinking, walking, talking. All of those can generate exhaustion in a person with TBI, and it can lead to inefficient sleep, which can leave your body you don't get enough rest at night, and so your body hasn't fully recovered to do the things that it has to do the next day. And because many daily activities require attention and focus, driving, walking, working, fatigue can lead to distractions, especially if you're driving or just walking down the street, which can lead to subsequent injury. Altered cognition, inability to concentrate, poor memory, problems with decision making, decreased self control, impulsivity, difficulty organizing thoughts, becoming hostile or easily angered, and poor judgment in social situations. All of those things can be results of TBI. And because of the initial TBI, they can also lead to subsequent injury. And alcohol and drug use, because alcohol can, it also lowers inhibitions. It also alters your cognition. It can make you fatigued. It can act as a depression, depressive on your central nervous system, um, because if you're already dealing with anything, any of the other risk factors like seizures and lack of balance and fatigue, alcohol and drug use can compound and exacerbate those problems. The best practices for prevention when it comes to seizures, medication, and having an additional person present if you're doing anything like swimming, taking a bath, even climbing up a ladder, driving. Um, of course, a medical doctor would have to sign off um, to allow a person who experiences seizures after TBI to drive. And then avoidance. Avoid doing those things that if you were to experience or have a seizure while you're doing them could cause re-injury. So just avoid those altogether if possible. Excuse me. For lack of balance and coordination, physical therapy can help to strengthen the muscles that you need to engage to maintain balance and coordination. Mobility aids, so canes, walkers, wheelchairs if necessary, and also physical therapy in your environment that you have to navigate. So best practices in physical therapy in your home, in a park, around your workplace. If the physical therapist cannot go with you to those places, then they can give you exercises to do at those places so that you can navigate them better. Fatigue. Best practice for prevention of fatigue is just to pay attention to your body. Excuse me. Know your limits and take breaks as you need them. Make people around you aware that you need breaks, and so they can give you the space to do that. Exercise sounds, to some people, it sounds counterintuitive, but exercise can really boost your metabolism and boost your energy, and so you can combat fatigue. And then having a routine. Also having a strong interpersonal relationship with different people who would be considered stakeholders in your well-being. And so they can also watch for signs of fatigue and depression, because depression is also a risk factor after TBI. For altered cognition, again, having a large group or a group of stakeholders in your well-being, so you have a support system. So not just your significant other or your partner or your dependents in your home, but also just friends to check on you, your coworkers or your supervisor at work, um, to make sure that they're all aware that you may experience the altered cognition, and then to have maybe a nonverbal cue to identify behavior for the person who is experiencing it, as opposed to confronting them head on, which may exacerbate the problem, which may make them more angry or more depressed. Just to give a cue like a post-it note, to put a post-it note on their desk, like let's say the color red, post-it note if they're getting angry so they can see it and be aware of how their behavior has changed. Pharmaceutical intervention, so medication to help stave off the mood swings, and outpatient behavior therapy. For the alcohol and drug use, basically is avoidance. 100% of avoidance, primarily because it lowers inhibition, it does change your mood, and it may interact adversely with any medication that you're taking. So some causes of TBI are unavoidable because they're unintentional, being hit, you know, with debris in a hurricane, even if you're sheltered in place. Some of those things you can't avoid. Being hit with an object during a car accident, or being in a collision where you experience a TBI. Again, some of those things are unavoidable. But the risks that exist prior to initial TBI more than likely are risks that also exist after TBI, and they can cause subsequent traumatic injury. So being aware of those outcomes of TBI, being aware of the risk factors, and having a support system to help you manage or mitigate those risks before and after TBI. Also to manage and mitigate or watch your behavior. So you can either get medical intervention as needed or therapeutic intervention as needed. All of those can aid in prevention. And so that was my article. The national web resources that I found when it comes to TBI, the majority of the information that I found were all veteran based. Unfortunately, because they're more than just that population that experienced TBI. But on the VA website, polytrauma was one of the, if you go to va.gov, if you punch in TBI, polytrauma is one of the first links that comes up on the VA website. And the VA, the Veterans Administration website also houses multiple resources related to TBI, because TBI often it co-occurs with another traumatic injury, PTSD, depression, things like that. MakeTheConnection.net is also a veteran-based website, but instead of just trying to read a lot of information, the Make the Connection website has personal stories of service members who have experienced trauma and how they found their normalcy again. And I think it's really beneficial to just be able to watch videos and not have to sit with the information and try to comprehend it on your own and read it and then click through a lot of links. A lot of this is a point and click, and then you get a video with a person talking to you about what they experienced and how they overcame it. Let's see. I don't know what happened. Go back to my web resources. Okay. So the last one, hopefully you got that. The last resource I found was the Mayo Clinic. And of course, the Mayo Clinic is primarily medical, but if you type in TBI, it has about 1,000 articles about TBI that help explain signs and symptoms, how to support loved ones, and information on TBI treatment options. And these are my references. That is it for my portion. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new. Yeah, have a great day.